Let's talk a little bit now that we've got the baseline of what's going on from Jason in that last segment. Where do we go from here? The governor's talked about making changes to the agency. What's prompting that?
I actually want to move back and say,
well,
with Scott Walker, he's not talked about this very much, but when there is a controversy, you can always tell where he stands by how he responds to it before the story breaks. And in this case, he decided to get rid of, or propose getting rid of, the loan program at WEDC even before the first story ran. And as the State Journal pointed out in their story today, he made his announcement just an hour or so after they released the records on this proposal. So, I mean, this is a typical response from Walker. If he's got a controversial staffer, he knows the story is going to come out about it, he usually fires the person before the story runs. And in this case, his actions speak louder than his words. His decision to suspend the loan program indicates that he thinks this is a potential problem.
Okay. Well, this was a centerpiece of when Walker came into office. This was one of his major reforms about how to get government working more efficiently and really zoned in on jobs. We're hearing today that sort of the final numbers on his jobs promise, it was somewhere in the 129,000 range rather than 250,000. But do you have any thoughts, Mary, on how, I mean, where does this go now? The governor wants to make some changes, but what's the next step here?
You know, I don't know if the administration knows what the next step is. I feel like it has been very reactive, where a problem comes to light and so there's a reaction to that problem, then another comes up and there's a reaction. I don't know what the long-term vision for the WEDC is, and I don't know if Governor Walker knows. I feel like, you know, obviously it was a centerpiece of his 2010 campaign. This was one of his first things, was to create this jobs agency, and it's really been struggling, and this last audit shows it's not getting better.
Christian Schneider wrote a piece for the Journal Sentinel this week saying that we need to get rid of it altogether. Christian, a conservative, is making the case for that, and he's opposed to any sort of corporate welfare. But once again, it's a case where Walker's not speaking out on it, so you have Republicans going in different directions on what should be happening with this.
Well, it's certainly a case where this is our new model for Wisconsin, but other states have success with these programs, right? Yes? No? I mean, there's got to be some model that
They did
can
look
work.
at models in other states, but it was interesting because a lot of those models, when it was first being created, we looked at some of those models and some of them had very similar problems, especially in these quickly created, where it was just like, you know, and even Governor Walker himself has said, looking back, maybe this should have been slowed down a little bit.
In Indiana, isn't that? That was a very similar situation. Governor Mitch Daniels had set up a similar entity, and there were news stories pointing out problems very similar to this.
All right, we're going to bring in Craig Gilbert, who's our Washington Bureau reporter now, and just get his take on this issue, mostly from the perspective of, you know, when someone's running for president, you want to minimize all the distractions, and you don't want headlines about agencies that can't track where money's going and loans granted and all this other stuff. Craig, do you see any case where this will spill into the presidential race, or is it mostly a distraction? How do you think this plays with Walker as he pursues the presidential candidacy?
I think it's mostly a distraction at this point, but I think as just sort of a general proposition, I mean, everything that happens back home has the potential to kind of complicate his presidential campaign. I mean, as we speak right now, he's in Oklahoma City giving a speech. He's on the road a lot. He was in Washington earlier this week. He'll be in New Hampshire again soon. So he's a very attractive candidate to Republicans outside Wisconsin because of his political success in Wisconsin. So anything that kind of casts a cloud over that political success, I think is, you know, something he would not, that he does not welcome and is not, and would try to avoid. He's, you know, what he's trying to do is a difficult thing. He's trying to do two jobs at once.
You know, but at the same time, it hasn't affected him. He's had issues since February where it's a two-track system. He's got his presidential race going on, and he has what's going on in Wisconsin. His presidential run has gone extremely well since he got in, or since he first started pursuing it. What's been going on here has not been going so well. And you know, even this week, he's done a number of media interviews. He's talking about a wide range of issues, but none of them have to do with what's going on in Wisconsin. He's talking about,
you could argue that his running for president has had a more negative impact on his standing in Wisconsin than anything that's happened in Wisconsin has had on his run for president. I mean, it's still very early. And these things could end up having a cumulative effect, but I don't think any of them automatically and certainly not immediately translate into kind of baggage for him as a presidential candidate.